ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We have been studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga, which is mostly his lecture series on the Upanishads. And in the first chapter called Necessity of Religion, we have seen two things. One is that in every man there is a struggle to go beyond the senses, either to find what is the real in my body or to find what is real in this nature. And search may be from any side, but it ends in unit abstraction. That means the subtlest element, which is either of the form of a personal God or Nirguna Brahma, Satchidananda, one without a second, formless, or some abstract principle like the moral law. Second point Swamiji made in that lecture was that all ethics is based upon not I but thou. All ethics. The utilitarian standards cannot explain the rationale behind the ethics. And the rationale behind not I but thou is that we are all one. We are not different. And therefore, instead of thinking of this small self, I should think of all together. That was the theme in the necessity of religion. Then coming to this lecture, the real nature of man, which is clearly based upon the Katha Upanishad, Swamiji says death is the noblest thing in life. And however we may cling to our senses, that means the fact of life today. But when the death comes, then whatever we have done throughout life, is it the end there? Does something remain or nothing remains? It is said that Alexander the Great, when he was about to die, whatever he had robbed the other kings, that means the crowns and jewels, and he kept around him and was thinking that nothing of this I can take, I am going away. So is this the end of all my struggles throughout my life? To be called the great and to prove that I am small. So this death is a factor in life. And then when we look to the world, we see that everything is evanescent, going away. And going away is the nature of this world. And so, if we apply our brain only, then it ends in nihilism, that nothing is real in the world. Unless we know that there is a reality, only the analytical brain will tell us that nothing is real. And Swamiji says that I have not seen even two persons. A man, never seen a man who could be nihilist for 1 minute. It is very easy to talk. That means if we are nihilist, we should stop living. We should stop eating. We should stop in the moment. But only in talk, when we are asked to analyze, we say nihilism. Actual practical life, that is not possible. So the search comes to the other side, that all this cannot be zero. All this can at the most be shadow. And if this is a shadow, then we have to look for the reality. And we find in the Rigveda that fire, the god of fire is being prayed when the corpse is on the fire, that the corpse will get burned. But oh fire, carry this, that means the person whose corpse was there, carry this lightly, gradually to his Sargaloka. So, and Swamiji generally says, by generalizing, that this is true in every religion, that we are degeneration of what we were. When Brahma creates this world through externalism, the externalism goes on increasing till it comes to a point where it cannot be sustained. And then Swamiji shows through the example of Manu in our scriptures that the fish asked him to save the pair of everything so that the world can be populated again. Swamiji says this is the mythological way of putting it. There is a great truth behind it. And then it comes down heavily upon those who those who believe in this, they are called by so-called rationalists as superstitious people. Swamiji comes around and tells us that if you take the name of Tyndall or Huxley or Darwin, we swallow it without salt. So is this not superstition? Without verification, without any proof, we just accept by names. And Swamiji says that superstition was life-giving. That superstition was giving God to man. And this superstition is filthy lucre. So, that is the difference. So this is about the language through which it is put. The science may be using refined language, but what is that behind that? There is nothing. While behind it mythological language was a great truth. So now, Swamiji compares the mythologies which tells us that we are degradations with the Darwinian evolution, where we were mollusk and now we have become man. So this shows that evolution. Now, the Vedantic way which Swamiji is using is, if there is any school of thought, use their own reason to disprove them, to show that your thinking is very limited. So the Darwinians or the scientists believe in evolution, and the meaning is that nothing can come into being from zero. So how this evolution we accept? How this intelligence has come as man? Unless it was already involved. So, like this, Swamiji, without rejecting the theory of evolution, tells us that it is incomplete. Reading between the lines, we can say that this evolution, Darwinian evolution, is 1/4. 1/4, just for saving I am telling, that evolution from mollusk to man has come. Bodily evolution. But this is not complete picture. Now the mind will evolve. Now the consciousness will evolve. And the ultimate end we shall see in Buddha or Christ. Buddha man, Swamiji says, Christ man. So that is the highest point we reach. And then if that is the highest point, that must have been involved in the mollusk itself. Unless it was there, how can it come out? Something new means out of nothing. Then only you can call it new. So, using the theory of evolution, Swamiji is showing that 1/4 I said because Up till now, evolution is half. It will be full in Buddha, and involution, add. As much evolution, that much involution. So I said this year is only 1/4. So this is what Swamiji shows. Very, very rationally, much more rationally than science can prove anything. Now we come to the next point. Up to this we had read. Now this evolution has taken place and the body has become evolved. Now I read, there is a great discussion going on as to whether the aggregate of materials we call the body is the cause of manifestation of the force we call the soul, thought, etc. Here Swamiji is not specifically talking about Atman, any subtle element which is in the body. So mind, soul, Atman, all taken together. So whether the body, when the combination comes, that is a theory, that when there is a combination, inside that a reaction comes like mind or soul, or they are not separately real. So that is one side. The other side is that we call the body is the cause of manifestation of the force we call the soul, thought, etc., or whether it is a thought that manifests this body. Because if after combination the mind comes, who made the combination? There also same thing, that we are reasoning half only. We are supposing that when this combination is there, the reaction comes of mind or soul or anything. But how the combination came? Do we have any solution for that? So, the religions of the world of course hold religions that the force called thought manifests the body and not the reverse. Body cannot manufacture mind, but mind manufactures body. Because mind is subtler, it makes the gross body. There are schools of modern thought which hold that what we call thought is simply the outcome of the adjustment of the parts of the machine which we call body. Body is like a machine and the combination of different parts is there and then thought comes out. Now even in the machine, unless you put energy in the machine, it never comes out. Taking the second position, that the soul or the mass of thought, or however you may call it, Swamiji is at present only as a group telling all the subtle things, is the outcome of the machine, the outcome of the chemical and physical combination of matter making up the body and brain, leaves the question unanswered. Who made the body? Who made the body? That question is not at all tackled. What makes the body? What force combines the molecules into the body form? What force is there which takes up materials from the mass of matter around and forms my body one way, another body another way, and so on? What makes these infinite distinctions? Yes, not only the body is made, but infinite types of bodies are made. No two men or women are exactly same in the body. And man and animal and so many bodies. So, some force is there which makes up bodies and makes different bodies. How to explain that? To say that the force called soul is the outcome of the combinations of the molecules of the body is putting the cart before the horse. Because we are not solving who made the body. And if we can solve who made the body, then it need not be said that body made the soul. So body made the soul is the reverse of a logic. That is called putting the cart before the horse. How did the combinations come? Where was the force to make them? You know what is the theory of science? Chance. Chance makes these combinations. Chance makes infinite varieties. The only meaning is that we do not know. When you talk of chance, the only meaning is that we do not know it comes. If you say that some other force was the cause of these combinations and soul was the outcome of that matter, and that soul, which combined a certain mass of matter, was itself the result of the combinations, it is no answer. Some other force was there which made the body, and body made the soul. He says, what was that other force? And if we say that soul made body, then after soul made body, what is the need of body making the soul? So, this is incomplete logic means illogic. It is no answer. That theory ought to be taken which explains most of the facts, if not all, and that without contradicting other existing theories, a beautiful scientific way. It is more logical to say that the force which takes up the matter and forms the body is the same which manifests through that body. There is mind which makes this body and works in the body. That is more logical. To say therefore that the thought forces manifested by the body are the outcome of the arrangement of molecules and have no independent existence has no meaning. Neither can force evolve out of matter. Swamiji is talking of those days when Einstein was unknown and law of conservation of matter and law of conservation of energy was held. So Swamiji is telling from matter how energy can come. Rather, it is possible to demonstrate that what we call matter does not exist at all. It is only a certain state of force. The other thing Swamiji is showing, demonstrating, solidity, hardness, or any other state of matter can be proved to be the result of motion. Increase of vortex motion imparted to the fluids given them the force of solids. Fluid is there, if the vortex motion is increased, it becomes solid. Swamiji is showing steps. A mass of air in vortex motion is as in a tornado becomes solid like, and by its impact breaks or cuts through solid. We are seeing that. When the storms come, how it breaks everything. Because that has become like some stone thrown. That matter has come out of that force, and it is that matter which hits and breaks something. A thread of a spider's web, if it could be moved, from this analogy Swamiji is imagining. If a thread of a spider's web, if it could be moved at almost infinite velocity, would be as strong as an iron chain and would cut through an oak tree. Feather. Looking at it in this way, it would be easier to prove that what we call matter does not exist, but the other way cannot be proved. Now, even now, when we bring energy out of matter, to break that matter we require energy first. We require energy to break the atom, and then more energy comes. So it is not coming from matter, but energy itself is used to bring out energy. What is the force which manifests itself through the body? It is obvious to all of us, whatever that force be, that it is taking particles up, as it were, and manipulating forms out of them, the human body. None else comes here to manipulate bodies for you and me. I never saw anybody eat food for me. I have to assimilate it, manufacture blood and bones and everything out of that food. What is this mysterious force? Ideas about the future and about the past seem to be terrifying to many. To many they seem to be mere speculation. That means what was there, that is past. What is going to come, that is future. Don't think of that, they say. But then without that, how to explain? We will take the present theme. So let us think of the present. What is this force which is now working through us? We know how in olden times, in all the ancient scriptures, this power, this manifestation of power was thought to be of a bright substance having the form of this body and which remained even after this body fell. First idea of the soul in the Western world or in non-Aryan world was that there was a bright body. Mind, being illumined by the Atman, is brighter compared to the body which is gross. And this mind is called as bright body in the Semitic and other religions. Later on, however, we find a higher idea coming that this bright body did not represent the force. That means they thought bright body. But bright body has a form. So who gave that form? So there has to be something higher. That something higher which does not have a form. To make a form we require a force. So if the gross body cannot be explained without the bright body, the bright body cannot be explained without something higher. And that something higher should not have a form. In this way, Swamiji is rationally, through argument, putting before us the findings of the rishis which they have found by direct experience. Swamiji is putting it logically so that we can consume it. Whatsoever has form must be the result of combination of particles and requires something else behind it to move it. If this body requires something which is not the body to manipulate it, the bright body by the same necessity will also require something other than itself to manipulate it. So, that something was called the soul, the Atman in Sanskrit. Soul is a very rough word. Sometimes mind itself is called soul, I consciousness is called soul. So, these days, Swamiji has used it. But these days the trend is not to translate the Sanskrit words. Keep them as they are, because they are no equivalent. So Swamiji here putting the soul and then call it the Atman in Sanskrit. It was and they reject the word soul, takes up Atman. It was the Atman which through the bright body, as it were, worked on the gross body outside. So, Atman, bright body, gross body. That is how it has made. The bright body is considered as the receptacle of the mind. Yes, bright body means actually it is the mind. Mind in a form called receptacle is bright body. Sukshma Sharir we call it. And the Atman is beyond that. It is not the mind even which works the mind, and through the mind, the body. It is not the mind even. It works through the mind. It is beyond mind, it works through the mind and works on the gross body. You have an Atman, I have another, each one of us has a separate Atman. Swamiji is taking us step by step. And from here he has brought us to the point that we have an Atman which has no form. And everybody's body is similar. So there is an Atman everywhere. I have another, each one of us has a separate Atman and a separate fine body, and through that we work on the gross external body. Now, up to this we have come. So find out what is the nature of that soul, what is the nature of that individual Atman. When we try to find the nature, we will find it is universal. That is how Swamiji is leading us to. Questions were then asked about the Atman, about its nature. What is this Atman? The soul of man, which is neither the body nor the mind. Great discussions followed, speculations were made, various shades of philosophic inquiry came into existence, and I shall try to place before you some of the conclusions that have been reached about this Atman. So speculation, philosophy, that is all right, but actually rishis find out by their supersensuous vision. Swamiji is putting it as if it's a rational discovery. The different philosophies seem to agree that this Atman, whatever it be, has neither form nor shape, and that which has neither form nor shape must be omnipresent. See, step by step, if it has a form, something has to form it. If it has no form, no shape, then it is omnipresent. That means form or shape limits the thing. If there is no form or shape, how can you say it is here and not here? How? That means it is within the space. That means it has a form. So if it has no form, it must be omnipresent, present everywhere. See, beautiful logic Swamiji has brought. That you have come up to Atman, and we can suppose everyone as an Atman. Now what is the nature of this Atman? If it is not the mind, if it is beyond the mind, that means it has no form or shape, then it is universal. Unless it has a form or shape, how it can be limited anywhere? Now three things are there: space, time, causation. That is at the root of science. Now space we have seen that space contains objects which have forms. And there is no form, then it is omnipresent. That means space-wise infinite. Now consider time. Time begins with mind. This is the important thing to understand. Example, in dream, time is different. 1 minute in the dream and whole years, 50 years pass away. So where it is? Time in the mind. In the waking mind, times work in a particular way. In the dream mind, it will say another way. When we are in deep sleep, we cannot know what is the time. When we get up, again we compare of the waking state and then we find time. So one must understand that time begins with the mind. This is very important discovery. Ancient rishis knew it. In the modern times, in Swamiji's time, it was German philosopher Immanuel Kant who found out. Whatever it may be, but Swamiji is showing us here that time begins in the mind. Space also is in the mind. Through mind only we are thinking of space. Causation cannot stand without time. What is causation? A sequence of events. A sequence of events, that means time changes. And if time is in the mind, this causation also is in the mind. That is the greatest point which man has to understand. This law of causation does not work in the reality. It has no connection with the nature of God. Because if God is beyond mind, it cannot have the causation at all. Causation is only our way of understanding a sequence of events. Causation cannot stand without time. Without the idea of succession, there cannot be any idea of causation. Time, space and causation therefore are in the mind. This is the most important point to know. Space imagined in the mind. Time is in the mind, we have seen. And causation depends upon time, so it is also in the mind. And as this Atman is beyond the mind and formless, it must be beyond time, beyond space and beyond causation. The logic is very clear. Now, if it is beyond time, space and causation, it must be infinite. Infinite in space, infinite in time, infinite in the thing itself, because it has no form, so it is infinite. You cannot limit it. Then comes the highest speculation in our philosophy. He calls it speculation and philosophy in the Rishi's researches. The infinite cannot be two. That does not go in the brain of many philosophers, Sankhyas or whatever they are. If there are two things, they limit each other in space. If there are two things, they limit each other in time and causation. So, infinite has to be one without a second. Atman, because it has no form or shape, has to be universal. Infinite, because it has no form or shape, because it is beyond mind. Time, space and causation is in the mind. Atman is beyond, so it is infinite. And now Swamiji tells that infinite cannot be two. If the soul be infinite, there can be only one soul. And all ideas of various souls, you having one soul and I having another and so forth, are not real. So what we call ourself is not real at all. It is the reflection. I consciousness, what is called Vijnanamaya Kosh, is only a reflection of the real Brahman. And that real Brahman is our reality. This I is not our reality, because it has to be infinite. The real man, therefore, is one and infinite. One means everybody has no different real man. The real man is one for all and infinite. The omnipresent spirit. Spirit means without a shape or without the body, consciousness, that is called spirit. Swamiji is using the available English words. And the apparent man is only a limitation of the real. I called it reflection. These are the two ways to understand. Space is infinite. We put a jar in a space and we see there is space in the jar. Space is one, unbroken. Even if you move the jar, space is not moved. But it appears limited. So like that what am I? That the reality appears to be limited by this body and mind, that I call as I. So, the real man therefore is one and infinite, the omnipresent spirit, and the apparent man is only a limitation of that real man. If you want the technical term, it is called Paricheda Parichedak, the limiter and the limited. In that sense, the mythologies are true that the apparent man, however great he may be, is only a dim reflection. So the other thing also Swamiji has used. If you take up space as an example, we call it limitation. If you take the sunlight as an example, we take it as a reflection. Pots of water, so many suns we shall see. So, they are not real light. The real light is only sun. It is only a reflection. Apparent man, however great he may be, is only a dim reflection of the real man who is beyond. I'll give a small example. Suppose there is a lighted candle and we put a mirror. We see the reflection, virtual. If you try to hold it, nothing is there. But the light is reflected as light. So, I appear to have consciousness because the infinite consciousness is reflected in this body and mind, so it appears there is an individual consciousness. The real man, the spirit being beyond cause and effect, not bound by time and space, must therefore be free. Individual soul, omnipresent, one soul, infinite, then not bound by time, space and causation, so free. If causation is not working, it is free. There was nothing before and after in the universal soul, no sequence. He was never bound. We are bound by our limitations, but the real self is never bound. So one after the other, the characteristics of the real self is being brought out by Swamiji, depending upon each other. And could not be bound. Could never be bound. The infinite can never be bound. In a personal sense, I'll tell you a story. According to the Puranas, when the Pandava Kauravas were to fight, Pandava sent Krishna as a messenger to avoid war and make peace. Now this Duryodhana, an adamant fellow, is not listening. Now Krishna is God himself. So he thought that if I show my universal form, he may be at least terrified. He may know that I am on the side of Pandava and he may agree for peace. But the brain of Duryodhana is very limited. So when Krishna showed the Vishwarup, Duryodhana said, he is showing me magic, arrest him. And all these soldiers ran to arrest him. How can you bind him? He is beyond causation. How can you bind him? And so he came out of that bondage which was being attempted. So that is the personal way of putting the same infinite reality can never be bound. He was never bound and could not be bound. The apparent man, the reflection, is limited by time, space and causation and is therefore bound. Yes. It is the reflection in this body and mind has time, space and causation. So it works on that. This is the reality in our souls. Therefore bound. Or in the language of some of our philosophers, he appears to be bound, but really is not. Because it is not real itself. Its real nature is infinite, so he can be bound. But if you think he is an individual, he appears to be bound. Refination of language. This is the reality in our souls. This omnipresence, this spiritual nature, this infinity. Spiritual nature means bodilessness, formlessness. Every soul is infinite. Every soul, that means not many, apparently every, actually one. Every soul is infinite, therefore, there is no question of birth and death. Next corollary. If it is infinite, what is birth and death? A new body is made and the reflection comes there, and that we call as birth. Swamiji has given an example here. Some children were being examined. The examiner put them rather hard questions, and among them was this one: why does not the earth fall? He wanted to evoke answers about gravitation. Most of the children could not answer at all. A few answered that it was gravitation or something. One bright little girl answered it by putting another question: where should it fall? Falling means coming to the earth. Falling means coming to the earth. So where the earth should fall? So question is absurd. Question is illogical. And therefore, the soul has no birth or death. How it can come under limitation? The question is nonsense. Where should the earth fall? There is no falling or rising for the earth. In infinite space, there is no up and down. That is only in the relative. When we stand like this is up and this is down. And if we take the modern knowledge, then America is down. It is in Patala. And for America, we are in Patala. So, this down and up is of no meaning. In infinite space, there is no up or down, that is only in the relative. Where is the going or coming for the infinite? When should it come and whither should it go? Because it is infinite. Thus, when people cease to think of the past or future, when they give up the idea of body, because the body comes and goes and is limited, then they have reason to a higher ideal. The body is not the real man, neither is the mind, for the mind waxes and wanes. My mind is not real, it changes. It is the spirit beyond, which alone can live forever. Now this thought, if cultivated, if this could be realized, will we not be free immediately? It is the spirit beyond, which alone can live forever. The body and mind are continually changing and are in fact only names of series of changeful phenomena. This is very important, very important. Think of the body. Now there is food, it is not my body. And when I eat it, it becomes my body. When I throw out the krita, it becomes non-my body. When I cut the hair, it is not my body. When I cut the nails, it is not my body. How can you define my body? Impossible to define. So, similarly mind. Now I learned something, that has become my mind. I changed my habit, that has gone. So the body and mind are continually changing and in fact only names of series of changeful phenomena. Now we call it a river, Ganga. Which is Ganga? Which water is Ganga? Even the banks change. So which is Ganga? So these are concepts in the mind. In fact, only names of series of changeful phenomena like rivers, yes, same example Swamiji has given, whose waters are in a constant state of flux, yet presenting the appearance of unbroken streams. Every particle in this body is continually changing. No one has the same body for many minutes together, continually changing. And yet we think of it as the same body. We breathe in, we take air in. It has become our body now. We stand in the sun, that energy is absorbed. It has become our body now. No one has the same body for many minutes together, and yet we think of it as the same body. So with the mind, one moment it is happy, another moment unhappy, one moment strong, another weak, an ever-changing whirlpool. Whirlpool, water comes, whirls and goes away, appears as a unit for the time being. That cannot be spirit, which is infinite. Change can only be in the limited. Change. To say that the infinite changes in any way is absurd, it cannot be. You cannot move and I cannot move. You can move and I can move as limited bodies. Every particle in this universe is in a constant state of flux. But taking the universe as a whole, as a unit, as one whole, it cannot move. It cannot change. Motion is always a relative thing. I move in relation to something else. Any particle in this universe can change in relation to any other particle. But take the whole universe as one, and in relation to what can it change, move? There is nothing besides it. So this infinite unit is the unchangeable, immovable, absolute, and this is the real man. So you have to trace the real man to the universal, absolute. Individual is always limited. Our reality, therefore, consists in the universal and not in the limited. Most important thing, how they go on quarreling, whether Jiva is a part or separate from God and all that. Jiva has no existence at all. It is only a reflection or an apparent limitation. The real nature is infinite. These are old delusions. Old means we do not know from where it started, but it is a delusion. However comfortable they are, to think that we are little limited being. We feel happy when we think we are some individual unit. But when we analyze, we find it evaporates. We are little limited beings constantly changing. People are frightened when they are told that they are universal being, everywhere present. Through everything you work, through every foot you move, through every lip you talk, through every heart you feel. So, immanence, the universal immanence. That means you are universal. So we see different hearts, different minds. You are in the hearts, you are in the mind. So, all you are, that is the conclusion being reached. People are frightened when they are told this. They are again and again ask you if they are not going to keep their individuality. What is individuality? Somebody is asking now. I should like to see it. Nobody has seen his soul. If we could have seen it, we should have known that it is infinite. A baby has no moustache. Somebody has given an example of the change. When he grows to be a man, perhaps he has a moustache and beard. His individuality would be lost if it were in the body. He is a different person now. If I lose one eye, or if I lose one of my hands, my individuality would be lost if it were in the body. Then a drunkard should not give up drinking because he would lose his individuality. Some is showing the extremes for us to understand. A thief should not be a good man because he would thereby lose his individuality. No man ought to change his habits for fear of this. There is no individuality except in the infinite. The thought is so noble. It is not a thought, it is a realization. That is the only condition which does not change. Infinity. Everything else is in a constant state of flux. Neither can individuality be in memory. Some people think that I am the same I, so that memory is my individuality. Suppose on account of a blow on the head I forget all about my past, then I have lost all individuality. I am gone. I do not remember 2 or 3 years of my childhood. And if memory and existence are one, then whatever I forget is gone. That part of my life which I do not remember, I did not live. That is a very narrow idea of individuality. We are not individuals yet. We are struggling towards individuality. When we gain our infinitude, we are individuals. Otherwise, we are changing constantly. And that is the infinite. That is the real nature of man. From this, Swamiji, again, if we are universal, what should be our ideas and life? He alone lives, whose life is in the whole universe. And the more we concentrate our lives on limited things, the faster we go towards death. As the more we contract, we go towards death. And if we are infinite, all-pervading, we never die. Those moments alone we live, when our lives are in the universe, in others, and living this little life is death. Simply death. Because the real individuality is gone. And that is why the fear of death comes. Fear of death comes because I feel I am an individual. It is dying automatically. The fear of death can only be conquered when man realizes that so long as there is one life in the universe, he is living. So long as there is even one life in the universe, he is living. Because all lives are his. When he can say, I am in everything, in everybody, I am in all lives, I am the universe, then alone comes the state of fearlessness. So fear is an imperfection due to individuality. When the individuality is universal, it is fearlessness. To talk of immortality in constantly changing things is absurd. So man always wants to become immortal, but he thinks of himself as limited. It is absurd. Says an old Sanskrit philosopher, it is only the spirit that is the individual. Because it is infinite, no infinity can be divided, infinity cannot be broken into pieces. It is the same one, undivided unit forever, and this is the individual man, the real man. So individuality requires non-change, and that individuality only is in our reality. The apparent man is merely a struggle to express, to manifest this individuality. That is what is the constant struggle. Which is beyond, and evolution is not in the spirit. Another important point now, evolution. Evolution is in matter, and the spirit is manifested more and more. Wonderful thing. There are evolution of nature and manifestation of spirit. I remember a funny incident. In Ludhiana, there is one Gurudwara, very broad-minded were they. So they had a 3 days discussion on body. Now, 45 minutes I had to read a paper and 30 minutes for question and answer. So somebody asked me a question that you say that Atman is eternal, Atman never changes, then how do you talk of Atma Vikas, the development of Atman? I told him, even in 45 minutes, even once I have not used the word Atma Vikas. But I accept that the word is used. And there Atma does not mean Atma. Atma means only Antakaranam, our mind. So it is the mind which evolves. And there I remembered this sentence of Swamiji and I quoted. They are evolution of matter and manifestation of spirit. The meaning of evolution, ordinary change and evolution. Change is the law of nature, they say. You change into this, back into this. Evolution is that change which allows the soul to manifest more and more. That is evolution. So, evolution of nature and manifestation of spirit. Suppose there is a screen, example, Suppose there is a screen hiding you from me, in which there is a small hole through which I can see some of the faces before me, just a few faces. Now suppose the hole begins to grow larger and larger, and as it does so, more and more of the scene before me reveals itself. And when at last the whole screen has disappeared, I stand face to face with you all. You did not change at all in this case. It was the whole that was evolving, and you were gradually manifesting yourself. So it is with the spirit. No perfection is going to be attained. You are already... we are overcrossing our time now. We shall pick up from this point that Swamiji is deriving that you are not to gain perfection, you already are. You have to manifest it. So, can we... I think we stop here. So it is with the spirit. Up to this sentence we stop. So Swamiji has, in a flow of oratory, has lifted our mind and shown that if you can think really logically, it is like this. Body cannot make the mind, mind makes the body, mind also has shape, so something else is there to make the mind, and that something else cannot have any form, it cannot be matter, it is spirit, and starting from spirit, my spirit, your spirit, the spirit having no form is universal, so there infinities cannot be two, so there is only one spirit. And from that he is deriving the many characteristics of that Atman. We are free like that. We are not bound. And so a few more things will come like that. So in this way, that is the real nature of man. And what we are feeling today, our real nature, is a misnomer. It is only an appearance. To understand it, we can think of a reflection or a contraction or a limitation. So, in this way, we shall proceed in the next lecture. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagyaya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.